Hi, Mark Upton here from Sports Relations, and this recording is a presentation that I gave a few weeks ago to a Level 2 Australian Football Coaching Conference or course. And I promised those guys there that I'd do a recording of the presentation, some of the slides, because I had to skip over them due to time. So for you were one of the guys that were there, here's what I promised. For others that haven't seen it, hopefully there's some value and you can take away one or two things you might be able to apply in your own coaching situation or whatever environment you're in. And analysis and technology obviously has a large role to play these days. So this quote here from Jose Mourinho, I think encapsulates the fact that, like that first slide illustrated, that analysis and technology is one piece of the jigsaw that all fits into the bigger picture of coaching these days, along with everything else that's listed in that quote there. And as technology evolves and it becomes, to quote a buzzword, more user-friendly, becomes more accessible to coaches and more applicable to their day-to-day work across a range of levels, be it from the elite down to grassroots in some cases as well. So there's some of the things that we wanted to go through when we went through the presentation were the what's in it for me factor. Obviously everyone wants to be able to take something out of it. So these were some of the things that we brought up, that if you have used or want to use video in your coaching, if you're into stats or video software or apps that can help you, if you own a smartphone or tablet, or if you're just interested in how you can keep developing as a coach online. So if you can answer yes to any of those questions, hopefully there's something in this presentation for you. And we all understand that at times, even those that perhaps are more comfortable with technology still have some issues, and I'm sure we've all had this sort of relationship at times with tech. So as I mentioned earlier, it's becoming more user-friendly. There's still going to be times, especially if you're learning how to use it, that you're going to get a little bit frustrated, but that's all just part of the ride. So try and accept it and enjoy it where you can, and get on with it. So I've broken it down into two areas to look at. First being analysis, and that's independent of technology. I think a lot of the times perhaps potentially coaches at the sub-elite level get caught up in the fact that if I'm going to do analysis and analyse the game, that's directly linked with technology, and whilst technology does help, you can certainly do some really good analysis with pen and paper. So we'll go through some of that. And then the second part is the actual role of technology in three areas. So how, yes, it can certainly enhance your analysis and make it more efficient and effective, how it can play a role in teaching players, and how it can play a role in coach development. So for example, something like today, looking at an online resource that hopefully can help you develop as a coach. So why, in terms of analysis, why do we analyse, why do we measure, why do we evaluate, assess?
Agreed, but it's a huge mistake to theorise before one has data. Inevitably, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts.
So a smart man, Sherlock Holmes, says it's a mistake to theorise before one has data, and you can read the rest of the quote there. So, and this is what you often see a lot in coaching, is that because coaches either don't have the time or perhaps don't have the inclination to actually go out and seek the data, and in this case analyse, so your analysis produces that objective data, then they theorise and they go on the fact that their theories are in fact reality, and try and maybe twist any data that does exist around to suit their theories and what their gut feel is, versus doing it the other way, or at least merging the two together. So I think the best results come where a coach has some good data available and takes all that into account along with his own experiences to come to some decision or next action that he's going to take based on that. So along with the reasons why, well, studies have shown that in, for example, game situations or matches, that even highly experienced coaches or observers can only recall up to 50% of key match incidents, after the game. Here's Mick Malthouse, who's a highly experienced Australian football coach, so even someone such as him, he is vulnerable to that phenomena. So your ability to recall accurately is not great, and that can be further hindered by things like bias and highlighting. So we all have biases. We all get caught up on little things that happen, that irritate us. Whether it could be a certain player that has a bad habit that gets to you, whether it's a certain piece of play or way play unfolds that annoys you, and you tend to remember those things more frequently, so that if it might only happen once or twice in a game, and you might think that it's a real key issue when in fact it's really not. And a similar thing with highlighting is often things that happen at key moments in games get obviously highlighted really closely. So obviously, things that go right or wrong at the end of a tight game that perhaps decide the result. It's dangerous to think that that was the case across the whole game, or that's a real problem. If it was the first time it's happened for the game and the previous 15 times you did it well, yeah, you want to be able to do it right in crunch time, but perhaps it wasn't necessarily a problem across the whole game, and so that's a highlighting effect. So for all those reasons, that's why it's important to have that objective data and analysis available to you. And all it is I think, two key things: a permanent and objective record of performance, which pen and paper, we can achieve that with pen and paper, not just technology. So just some principles and philosophies on analysis that I've built up over the last few years. I think an important decision as a coach to make first is how much objective data and in what areas do you think you need objective data and analysis to help you in your coaching and making decisions. So, and I think it's a philosophical one. There's not necessarily any literature or research to say what's right or wrong in that regard, but need to work that out, I think, in advance. It might be whether it's the physical side of the game and wanting to know how far players have run and how hard training is, and periodisation to help you with that sort of stuff, or is it on the tactical side of play? You want to know how well you're executing your game style. Might be shots for times into the attacking area, or how often when you've pressed defensively you've turned the ball over. Things like that might be what you want measures on. It could be individual player measures. Could be to do with your culture. You might want to be able to measure your culture. I think that's a really interesting one, is how you perhaps collect feedback and measure your culture. I know a coach who's done that online with his team is to get them to submit what they think are positive and negative contributions to their culture from the last week. They do it anonymously, but they build up some examples of what's working and get a feel for what's working and what's not. So a lot of different options there, and you need to decide on that. I think for what you do analyse and measure, it needs to be the important stuff. Don't try to measure everything, and you need to do it over time. So a bit like with the RPE example, you need to do that over a period of time to then get some value out of that information. And I think it's the same if you're doing match analysis, that try to spot trends in your analysis over time. Don't react one-off week by week, something suddenly really bad or really good, and you sort of make impulse decisions based on that. Let trends emerge. Keep measuring the same critical things for a long period of time, and then you have even more confidence in the decisions that come out of that. I use process versus product to describe stats, if you like. So a lot of times what's ingrained in certain sports and their cultures of analysis is more product KPIs, if you like, so end results. So how many times did we score for inside 50s, or how many times did we win the ball from a stoppage or a line out? But they're really about the end product or the outcome. They don't really give you an insight and a valuable insight into the process that of how you went about achieving hopefully a good result. So, and process can be more tailored to analysing, I think, your game style. So how you want to play is actually coming up with measures that give you an insight into how you're playing. So the process that then hopefully results in the good end product, and just challenge, cliche stats that have been around for years that are bandied around as KPIs, but if you have a closer look, may or may not really be related to performance, and even if they are, may not give you much insight. Some stats are almost nearly no more helpful than the score line. So if the scoreboard says, yeah, we lost, well, yeah, we know that. some stats are pretty much about as helpful as that. Yeah, they highlight the obvious, but they don't tell me anything or give me any information that I can then action as a coach. The other way you can use your analysis and your data, I think, is to drive the actions and behaviours you want from your players, again, in a number of different areas across performance. And there's a saying that what gets measured gets done. And feedback given that is accompanied by some data, whether you present it just in tabular form or ideally probably visually in graphs, is a really good way, hopefully, to reward the behaviour that you want and drives players and more players to get on board and exhibit those behaviours. So that's just another way that you can use your analysis.